I'm Ben Meiselas from Legal AF, joined by co-host Karen Friedman, Agnifilo, Joseph Biggs of the terrorist organization, the Proud Boys, who was convicted of seditious conspiracy for his conduct on January 6th, was just sentenced to 17 years. And as he was being sentenced to 17 years in prison, he broke down in tears. He was crying and saying, "I know that I have to be punished, but please, I want to take my daughter to school one day and pick her up." He said he was sentenced to 17 years, which is actually half of what the government requested. The government requested 30 years. And so he's actually quite fortunate that he is not getting the full amount of time. And he was lucky that the judge presiding over the case was Judge Tim Kelly, a Trump appointed judge, because I think other judges would not have showed him, frankly, the same leniency that he received there. Just so you remember who Joseph Biggs is, there he is right there. He is the former leader of the Florida chapter of the Proud Boys. He was described as the tip of the spear on January 6th, who breached multiple police barricades and lines where the insurrectionists and terrorists then invaded the Capitol building. Literally, if you put that photo up again there, Salty, when they call him the tip of the spear, because he's literally the person in the front of all of the insurrectionists who pushed through and attacked the Capitol police officers and then entered unlawfully the Capitol building and engaged in massive amounts of damage, destruction, and harm, including the death of Capitol police officers as well. So you had the prosecution was requesting 30 years and it with a terrorist enhancement. And ultimately, Judge Kelly did not apply the terrorist enhancement, but included all of the other enhancements and adopted all the other findings by the Department of Justice. Biggs' approach at this hearing was a bit odd. I want to give a special shout out here to Kyle Cheney of Politico, who was in the courtroom, did some excellent reporting as well. This is what Biggs saying, trying to, I guess, curry remorse and favor, said to the judge and his staff, "You've done hell of a job here. I don't hate anybody in here. I don't hate the prosecutors. I pray for all of you. I definitely don't want to be a person affiliated with any more groups unless it's my daughter's PTA." He said. He says he refuses to talk politics with other January 6th inmates at the D.C. jail. He also says that before January 6th, he was planning to quit the Proud Boys because he wanted to be more focused on his daughter. He said, "I was seduced by the crowd and I just moved forward. I was curious. I wanted to see what would happen. My curiosity got the best of me, and I'm going to have to live with that for the rest of my life. I'm not a terrorist. I don't have hate in my heart." And Judge Kelly said that the terrorist enhancement was too much. That would have brought it to 30 years, but handed down a sentence of 17 years. Karen Friedman, Agnifilo, what do you make of what happened and his crocodile tears?
Mm-hmm. I mean, look, it's a little too late, right? I mean, it's what he did on January 6th is unforgivable. This guy. I mean, look, he was an Army vet. He apparently had a head injury in Iraq, but that makes me wonder, is that why he went insane and became a Proud Boy leader and led this horrible riot on January 6th? But he was absolutely not just a participant. He was an instigator and a leader. And on top of that, I think what's really galling is this wasn't just like some of the individuals there, a one-day thing, like where, we just got caught up because, like the guys, I can't remember their names, but the two January 6th people who testified at the select committee who said, look, the president said to come, we came, we thought we were doing what we should do for the president. We thought we were just following what he wanted us to do as a one day sort of thing. not that it excuses it, but this is somebody who really was a leader in this movement. And he was a correspondent for the conspiracy website, Alex Jones's conspiracy website, InfoWars. So he was very much a vocal and influential proponent of, using political violence and using it as a tool and a weapon. And he used his military experience and his know-how, as well as this public profile he was able to develop as to lead this revolt on January 6th. So he was really a leader there who, as you said, was the tip of the spear. He ended up tearing down a fence between police and rioters, and that's largely what was able to allow people to breach the Capitol, and all of the things that we all know about that happened that day. So, it's one thing to say, oh, I really want to go, be a part of my daughter's life and take her to school. So sad, so sad. And, for any human with any emotion for a second can feel bad. But you know what? You should have thought of that before you decided to overthrow this country and basically, have another civil war and a revolution and steal, an election. That's the worst crime imaginable, right? Because that's he's trying to tear down our society. He's trying to dismantle the United States of America and the Constitution of the United States that has been governing us for, more than 200 years. So, it's just insane to me that, feel sorry for me, woe is me. And, he's going to try to be thankful and all that to the court, and he's distancing himself. That's great. I think it's good, but, it's too little too late. And, the damage that he did is something we're still living with, right? I mean, look what's happening. Look at the election, that we're about to face. Look at, this country's never been more divided. And it's because of people like him who has been spreading misinformation through his, conspiracy website and, the InfoWars and all of that. So honestly, he deserves this and every second that, and any second more that he could have gotten. He's lucky he got 17 years because this guy does, in my opinion, he did deserve something like the 33 years that the prosecution was asking for.
On January 6th, after he engaged in all of this violent conduct, he was repeatedly chanting that he was having an effing boner, and repeated that over and over again. He was laughing thereafter about how he claims Trump really won, and Democrats for believing that Trump was going to be forced to leave the White House after the election. You have Biggs in July 2021 complaining about his conditions in jail, how miserable he feels and how miserable he believes he was being treated. One of the notable things about Biggs' defenses that his lawyer Norm Pattis was focusing on throughout the case and in sentencing as well was that Donald Trump was the one who was responsible, and Biggs was just following orders, and that Biggs was just being duped basically. So just interesting that the defense was basically throwing Donald Trump under the bus, but the bottom line is that's actually not it.
I was just going to say, I don't disagree with that, by the way. That's what's frustrated me this whole time is that you've got all these other, pathetic people who followed this, this person that they thought was, their leader and who's still doing this, and yet he walks free. All these other people, 1,000 people incarcerated from January 6th, and all of them, none of them would have done this but for Donald Trump. Not one. This January 6th would not have happened if Donald Trump had not instigated it, incited it, and pointed the crowd at the Capitol. Every single one of them is going to their life is ruined because of him. And yet he walks free. He flies around in his private jet. His passport hasn't been taken from him. Thank God, finally someone set bail. And, in Fulton County, he had $200,000 bond. He didn't even have that before. The guy has not been held to account, not for 1 second. And I actually agree with that defense attorney. It is outrageous to me that all these other, just hapless followers, not that they don't deserve it. They do deserve it. But Donald Trump deserves it more. And until he is behind bars like the rest of them, it's not, justice and fairness will not have occurred.
Yeah. And what you just said is not political. It's just very simply the facts of what's taken place. And throughout this ordeal, the fact that the majority of the Republican Party, if you say exactly what you just said, Karen, says, "Oh, you're weaponizing the DOJ and this is weaponization." It's like, no, the man committed the most despicable crime in our history that we all saw. Weaponization, actually, of the DOJ is being lenient on him, because what should be taking place is that he's already in jail doing 17 years like Joseph Biggs. It's also worth noting that Biggs was the co-leader of the so-called Ministry of Defense, which was the most violent group that coordinated the January 6th insurrectionist conduct that day as well on the ground, listening to Trump's statements. Be there. Like, let's not forget also, right? Mid-December, you had Enrique Tarrio, the leader of the Proud Boys, who was the co-leader of the Ministry of Defense with Joseph Biggs, was at the White House taking photographs in like the presidential residence area and posting it on social media. So this is what we are dealing with, folks. But there he is crying, saying he's not going to get to see his daughter. But cry me a river. You engaged in an insurrection, and frankly, you're lucky you weren't sentenced to 30 years or more. That's our duet. Ben Meiselas, Karen Friedman, Agnifilo. Check out MeidasTouch.com for more breaking news, and especially more on this story as well. Have a good one.
Hey, Meidas Mighty. Love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.